Thank you, Ken Corlett. Minister, this is to ask for an update about the local live performance scheme administered through the local authorities, and specifically to ask to the number of artists, performers and events in Dublin that have benefited as a consequence of that scheme. Thank you.
Deputy, and I introduced the Local Live Performance Scheme, the LLPSS, in 2021 as part of a suite of measures aimed at supporting the live entertainment sector through the COVID pandemic. The scheme allocated funding to local authorities to stage live events and thereby animate our town centres for local communities. A key objective of the scheme was to provide for the procurement by local authorities of performances by local performers and local crews in their communities. I provided funding of €8.8 million in 2021 to the LLPSS, and the scheme proved very popular with events taking place in every county in the country. Every local authority participated, with 352 events taking place around the country during 2021. In 2021, the scheme provided for over 7,800 employment days, with over 5,600 individual artists, performers, production and technical crew benefiting from the scheme. In 2021, in Dublin, across the 4 local authorities, 122 individual events took place, which were funded by the LLPSS, and this resulted in 1,692 employment days for 1,006 individual artists, performers, production and technical crew benefiting from events in Dublin under this scheme. Feedback from local authorities was overwhelmingly positive, acknowledging that the scheme had helped to reinvigorate local communities and provide a welcome boost to their economies during the pandemic. This year, I provided €5 million for events up until the end of June to provide a boost to the reopening of the entertainment sector, allowing live events to take place and local talent to perform to audiences across the country. As the events are still ongoing until the end of the month, the feedback surveys detailing the number of artists or crews or events for 2022 events to date is not yet available, Deputy. Given the success of the scheme, I have recently allocated a further €5 million to provide for events up until Halloween across the country, and I'm delighted that the Local Live Performance Programming Scheme for local authorities has been such a success. This scheme was part of the €50 million suite of supports in 2022 for those working in the live entertainment sector, and has provided support to so many working in this sector, and I look forward to seeing communities enjoying the wide range of events over the coming months.
Thank you, Minister. Just a couple of clarifying questions. I think there, just forgive me, just checking those figures. You said 7,800 employment days in 2021 and 1,692 in 2022, but you also mentioned a figure, I think, of 5,600. Is that correct? Of what was that?
Will I come back?
Do you mind?
Yeah. In 2021, the scheme provided for 7,800 employment days with over 5,600 individual artists.
Okay. It's just that, Minister, I have a press release from you from the 7th of March, which describes 10,000 employment days. It says 2021 supported 350 events. Funding supported 10,000 days of employment. It's not clear whether that relates to 2021 or whether that's a cumulative total up to the 2022. But either way, it just doesn't seem to add up. So we might just, if it's possible, to check that and come back. Perhaps the press release is inaccurate. But just a couple of questions in relation to the distribution of the funds. Again, following Deputy Kern's question about when these are paid, I appreciate that you're making the funding available to the local authorities, but could you just clarify how is that being distributed then to the artists? And do you envisage this funding continuing, or, sorry, you've already answered that. Go on. Sorry.
So say, for example, in DLR, so 245,000 was given, and we give that money, and then the local authorities will look after the events and the artists from that. So you would have seen those recent events like the Poetry of Seamus Heaney in Irish from Féile Imran and Tiernan Og and Mill Theatre, and others. I think there was a baby rave as well. But so we give that. So the four local authorities in Dublin were given €245,000 each year, and then so we give the money to them, and then they employ the local artists and the events.
I too am fascinated. Have you ever had one of those?
No, I've not been at a baby rave. I confirm that I've.
It's for babies to dance together, explore music, the wonders of it, and rhythm at an early age.
I suspect it's more for the parents to get out, but that might just be me. So, Minister, what I was wondering is then what the questions now being asked. I mean, obviously, this is transitioning away from a COVID period where the requirement to support artists in this particular way may be changing. Obviously, you've indicated a transition to a basic income sort of a model for artists. What questions now are being asked of you in the department in advance of the budget by this sector? Is this still the sort of funding that's being looked for through the local authorities, or is there something, a recognition that we're moving back, I hope, to a more reality, even if we're still having baby rapes. We might be moving back to a more realistic form of providing entertainment in the long run. I appreciate the model of funding may be transitioning, and I wonder if you can give me more detail on that in advance of the budget.
Yes, Deputy. As I said, the most recent one would have been that €5 million up to events up until the end of June, and then recently, due to success, that further €5 million that will run up until Halloween. But the various supports, I suppose, put in place to the live entertainments were designed to address the challenges posed by the pandemic, and in particular the constraints which were imposed in live performance by the necessary restrictions on indoor and outdoor congregation. And these supports were designed in close consultation with the stakeholders and have been the subject of very positive feedback. So thankfully we're in a position where the restrictions have fully lifted and the rationale for interventions no longer applies, but nonetheless my officials will remain in contact with the stakeholders across the sector. While a continuation of the existing schemes is not envisaged, as I said, we will continue to engage in the coming months, and I do anticipate submissions from the sector in advance of the budget, which will be considered in the normal way ahead of Budget 2023.